All right, I think we're ready to start.
Awesome.
Thank thank you all for joining us. I'm very excited. Jeff is a wonderful friend of mine. He's been in this industry for a very long time, and he knows a lot about flooring and construction and design. So I'm very excited to have him here talking with everyone. If you have any questions, you can feel free to post them in the chat, and Jeff will answer them, and I'll make sure he sees them as he's presenting. He'll also have his contact information at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions afterwards or would like to give him a call, you'll have his information and can reach out directly. So thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us. I'm very excited to watch your presentation.
Great. Well, thanks for the warm introduction, Beth, and I appreciate it. Yeah, gotten to know Beth quite a bit over the past few years, so friendship is a great way to do that. You know, as us as vendors, home away a lot, so having good vendor friends is always important. So again, thanks for the warm introduction. Again, Jeff Adney with Tuition Construction. Going to talk a little bit today about, kind of, we'll call it 30,000 foot level, what it takes to start a pet care facility today. So kind of walking through that. And let's see. So who we are. So I represent Tuition Construction. Tuition Construction is a second generation design build firm out of a small town of Wilmer, Minnesota, about 2 hours west of the Twin Cities. Um, about 80 to 85% of Tuition Construction's business is in the pet care world. So whether that's boarding daycare, veterinary, or some shelter work, that's where we do most of our work. Majority of our employees do report to the corporate office there in Wilmer, Minnesota. I actually live in Northwest Indiana, just outside Chicago. But as a design build firm, what that means is we are a full architectural staff as well as a full general contractor. And so we will design the project and then get you through to the turning you the keys and open for business. So what we do, everything we do, we kind of help you plan. So as a development consultant, which is what I am, if you come to me with this dream of what you want to do, whether it's ground up construction, leasehold renovation, or renovating existing building, I'm going to walk through kind of a three-step process to make sure that this thing, to first, number one, understand all your wants and needs. Number two, help you with consultation as far as zoning and permitting and those types of things. And then at the end of the day, we really just want to make sure that your project cash flows. So we work with you on all that. So as a development consultant for Tuition Construction, my goal is to help you to achieve your dream. Or if we've gone through everything, we haven't achieved your dream, what do we need to do to change that? So as Beth pointed out, I've been in the animal care world now for I want to say 25 years. Most of my time has been spent in the epoxy or resinous coatings world. So, installing floors for epoxy-based flooring for veterinary hospitals, boarding facilities, shelters all across the nation, is where I got started. Tuition Construction was actually one of my number one clients, and that's how I got to know them. And when I finally sold the business, spent a couple years in corporate world and came to Tuition Construction and asked if they had a place for me, and they begrudgingly brought me on board. So that's where I ended up. So again, big picture, who we are, a national design build firm out of Wilmer, Minnesota, specializing in boarding and daycare facilities. Um, so what I'm going to try to talk about today is you have this idea of you want to plan your new pet care facility. So we're going to go through the programming piece of it, who your team should be, property, land, lease, renovation projects, what architecture and engineering means, and really the construction budgeting and good practices when looking at building a pet care facility. So really, you want to start with your master plan. What do you want in the end, and what areas are you flexible to get there? So what do I mean by that? So, you need to state what it is that you want to do. Are you boarding and daycare only? Are you boarding daycare grooming? Are you boarding and training or train and board? Really try to define what that business model looks like. The more you can let, whether it's your architect or your contractor know, the better idea they know of how to design and build out your facility. And I always say, put together your entire wish list, all your wants and your needs. but how flexible are you to get there? Unfortunately, construction costs are continuing to escalate. It's getting tougher and tougher to keep projects in budget. So, are there certain things that you can not necessarily have right away and plan for in the future? So, think about that. Who do you need? You, of course, you are the first member, so you're going to be part of this. And I also say your family. You know, you're going to spend a lot of time getting this project off the ground. Make sure you've got everybody on board. You're also probably at some point going to need either an architect or a designer to help you lay out the facility flow, help you pick out finishes, whether it's artificial turf, whether it's wall protection, flooring, those types of things. You're also going to need some sort of contractor, whether it's your general contractor, subcontractor, those types of things. As a general contractor, typically they don't self-perform a whole lot of work, so they're going to work with local subcontractors to help build the facility. You're also going to need a lender, whether you go conventional type lending or if you're going with SBA type lending. Both work well in this facility. Just depends how much equity you have to inject, or you might be self-financing. If that's the case, and then maybe you don't need a lender. But you know, part of our goal is to help you look at all those types of things. Also, going to need a realtor. When it comes to realtors, I highly recommend you try to find a realtor or realtor agency that understands this space. There are some national firms that understand the pet care world. And by going with them, you can start looking at, they can help weaning out the projects that just aren't going to work or the buildings or the property that isn't going to work based on zoning or permitting or those types of things. Where a lot of times a typical commercial real estate, if they don't understand animal care, it's difficult for us to direct them in the types of spaces that you may or may not be looking for. You're going to need some sort of consultant, whether that's on the operational side, helping you build policies and procedures, or maybe it's somebody social media side helping you get off the ground. Of course, you're going to need an accountant, getting your CPA as well as other accountants in line to help. Once you get open for business, they're going to come later in the game. And then lastly, legal. You're going to need some attorneys help you set up operating agreements and some landholding real estate agreements, things like that. So and your EIN numbers along those lines. So those are some of the players that you're going to need. May or may not need all of them. Some of them you may be working with all at the same time. Some of them you're just going to grab as you need. So what type of project are you going to be doing? And if you want to throw in your chats, that'd be great. If kind of let me know what kind of projects you're doing. I am going to go through the three common types that we see today. Ground up construction or what we call new construction is one of the ways to go through it. Purchase of an existing building and or renovating and or expanding. And then lastly is the leasehold build out. Those are the three most common ways that we see these projects happening. And I would say majority would go to the leasehold build out. Secondly is the ground up new construction. And third is purchase of an existing building and renovating. There are other ways to enter the market. You can definitely just acquire an existing business. And that works as well. So Beth, I am not seeing the chats, or did anybody come through?
I hadn't seen anybody post their projects, but I actually had a question.
Yeah, sure.
Can construction company, like, could you help with zoning and permitting? Because isn't that a pretty big issue when you're building or acquiring a property?
Yep, absolutely. So that's one of the slides that I'm going to get into. But as a general contractor and our architecture staff, once we get into some agreements and look at ways to move forward, that's part of what we do. So if somebody tells me, hey, I want to build in this area, we can pull up a zoning map. So let's say it's Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Delaware County. And so we can pull up on a map the different zoning and then get into what each of those, whether it's rural residential, whether it's highway commercial, we can pull up what each one of those zonings look like and what the allowed uses are going to be. So we part of our steps is checks and balances to make sure hey, this leasehold space that I'm looking at or this piece of property I want to purchase, we want to make sure that it has the proper zoning. And if it doesn't mean we need to strike it off. Then we're going to do a little bit deeper and find out what it's going to take to get a special use or a conditional use or sometimes a land use variance. And the use variance is sometimes a little more difficult to acquire, but it can be done. So that's a great question. Um, so I will keep rolling through here and kind of talk about each one of those. So when looking at new construction or what we call ground up, one of the first things we're going to do is check the land use and the zoning. So to your point, Beth, that's one of the things that we're going to do. So we're going to you send me a piece of property. I'm going to get on myself or our architectural team is going to get on the county website and we're going to find the zoning or the construction department, and then we're just going to start marrying up the maps. The unfortunate reality of a lot of the zoning maps is the zoning map doesn't always have all the streets and highways and things like that listed. So a lot of times it's a comparison of a Google map as well as that to figure out exactly where that property lies and figure out what kind of zoning is in there. So one of the first things that you want to do, so if you're looking at a piece of property, it's up for sale. Okay, what is it zoned right now? And does that zone allow for animal care, boarding, or daycare type use? If it doesn't, then the next step is, okay, what are the requirements to change that zoning if you really, really like that land? Second thing is checking the access to the site. So if this is an undeveloped piece of property, what does it look like as far as Department of Transportation? Is it a state highway? And then for somebody to turn off into your property where you're going to build this kennel, are you going to have to put in a de-acceleration lane or acceleration lane? What are those types of things? Anytime you get DOT involved, it can get a little more expensive. So understanding that that might be a cost that goes into purchasing of this property or getting your commercial business up and running. What utilities are available? So if this is a virgin piece of property, are there any utilities there? And I'm talking water, gas, electricity, or sewer. If not, what's it going to take to bring at least propane gas or natural gas and electricity to the site? And then you can always go well and septic, or are there water lines, city water and city sewer that you can tap into? So finding out what's available, how far it away will affect what it costs to what we call develop the land. What does that property look like? So what is the topography of it? Is it flat, hilly, swamp, wetlands? Is it all rock? All those things are going to affect what it takes to actually clear that land and get ready to build a building. A lot of people think, hey, it's farmland. It's going to be perfect. Well, just think farmland's been tilled all the time, so it's pretty soft. So usually a lot of times farmland, we have to bring out 12 to 15 inches of soil and then bring in more stable soil in order to build. Not all the time, but that's something to think about. Um, Other things, surveys. When you get into this, you're going to hear terms like ALTA survey, which is the American Land Title Association. Basically, they're checking all the boundaries, survey maps, things like that, just making sure if you're going through a loan of some sort, they're going to require an ALTA survey. Engineers are going to get involved, especially civil engineers looking at the topography and the boundary of that lot to know what's buildable. A lot of times there's setbacks and easements, all those types of things. So understanding just because you might have a 10-acre parcel, maybe after the easements are there and you've got some wetlands and some other topography challenges, you might only have like an acre to build on. And now if you throw that building up and some parking, maybe an acre is not quite enough. So again, part of our process is making sure that the piece of property that you're having is going to be buildable and what that size configures to. Also, we suggest you do some soil boring so that the civil engineer understands what that soil composite is made of. A lot of times when they bore into there and if they find some unstable soils below, it just changes how we can construct the building. Most likely somebody's going to require a phase one environmental study. Most likely that's going to come from the bank as well. What phase one environmental study it basically means is, hey, they're going to study the history of this land, see how it was used, and make sure we don't have any contaminants in there. It's a pretty lengthy process, not incredibly expensive, but is definitely something that needs to happen. When planning for new construction, I would say, 12 months is on the very short edge from when you first start thinking about it to open it. I see most construction projects take 24 to 36 months from conception all the way through opening the doors. Do we have any questions on this piece, Beth?
Buckeye Kennels says that they have been in business for 25 years and are looking at adding additional buildings to expand. I don't know if Buckeye, if you want to put in there if you are expanding on the same property or if these are like additional locations in different areas, or if you have any specific questions about what that would take.
And maybe it was commenting on the what type of project, so could be that
Probably.
expansion. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's great that you're already expanding.
I have another question actually.
Yep.
So if I am just starting, is the first step to talk to you for construction, or would the first step be to talk to an architect about the design and the build, like what it's going to look like?
So that is the whole chicken and egg thing,
Yeah.
right? What comes first, right? So you want to talk to a contractor, and the contractor says, "Well, how much money do you have to spend?" You go to the bank says, "Well, do you have a piece of property and do you know how much it's going to cost?" And so it goes round and round it goes. So when you we've seen it happen a lot of different ways. For us, we do like to be one of the first people that can get involved to help guide both on financial parts as well as property. But a lot of times, what I see happening is people have this vision, they want to start it. They've started searching for land and they found this piece of property, and then they will get us involved. So now we can start doing some due diligence, looking at this property. I might push back and say, okay, have you been pre-approved by a bank? And if so, for how much money? Just to make sure that things get in alignment on that side. And so there's a lot of different things. Once you've focused on a piece of property, there's a lot of different things that are all going to kind of happen simultaneously.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes we're brought in really late, like, hey, I brought this project 6 months ago, and we finally got through the hurdles of due diligence and zoning and permitting. And now the bank's asking for a budget estimate. Well, now we're a little late to the game. A lot of times you might have signed a letter of intent with a due diligence clause, and we might be running out. So we have to escalate and try to move forward a little bit quicker on some of those things.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, Buckeye Kennels wants to know who does soil borings. They are building on the same property but have had recent flooding issues from Helena. The undeveloped property was flooded and had a lot of soil washed away and silt dumped on it.
Okay. That's an excellent question. So where I would start with that would be probably reach out to a local civil engineer. You're going to want to get him involved, especially as you're starting to build on that property, so he can kind of show you, he's going to do a survey of that land with the topography map. And then he probably has in his back pocket some companies that would do the soil boring for them. Um, a lot of engineering can be done on a national, and when I say that, that's your structural, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. We can use national engineers. When it comes to the civil piece, we like to stay very local, and there's almost always going to be, two or three civil engineers to choose from in your local area. Engage with them, have a conversation with them, and then they can talk. Because not only do you need the soil borings, what do you do with the analysis of once it comes back? So that's why I say, starting with the civil engineer is a good place to go. We good? Awesome. So next is renovation or expansion of existing. So very similar to what Buckeye's doing here. He's got his existing boarding and daycare facility, I'm assuming, and now he's looking to expand upon this. Um, so that's one avenue. Here I'm going to talk about, all right, what I've done is I found through my searches, I found let's call it a 6,000 square foot pole barn that is zoned properly. This is what we're going to do. So, this is what I want to do. I want to build out the 6,000 square feet. What do I've got to do? Again, zoning is going to be the first thing that you're going to check. And just because it may have been a boarding and daycare facility in the past doesn't mean that maybe they got open under a conditional or special use if it wasn't zoned properly. So just because it was that before, when it changes ownership, you might have to go through that special use, conditional use rezoning a second time. Also, and then if it wasn't a boarding and daycare, let's say maybe it was a repair shop, an automotive repair shop that requires X number of stalls, and now you're opening a boarding and daycare. Maybe you're growing the space a little bit. Keep in mind that sometimes that use change that you're asking for could change your parking lot count. Again, that's something that we help with on our architectural level to kind of understand what parking looks like. It's just one of the many things that we'll dive into. Um, Other things to look at when you're looking at possibly purchasing this building is what are the utility capacities? So how much power is coming in there? Is it 200 volts? Is it three phase, single phase? Do you have water coming to it? Is it city water, city sewer, city gas? Believe it or not, a lot of the um, communities and the governing agencies when it comes to city sewer are now discouraging against having the animal care waste. And usually it's just urine rinsed, that's diluted with water, rinsed down into a drain. They don't like that coming into the rest of these city sewers. So sometimes you might need to add a separator and things like that. Or if you're in the country, most likely you're going to be looking at a septic type tank. One of the things we definitely recommend when looking at purchasing an existing building is we recommend both a structural engineer to come through and just make sure everything is sound, as well as underground plumbing investigation. So we want to understand the size of the plumbing coming out of there, the size of the pipes, to make sure that it can handle the volume of water that a lot of boarding, daycare, and grooming facilities do. Um, Phase one environmental study is almost always going to happen when you're looking for a renovation or expansion of existing building, especially if it was an automotive place. And usually when it's an automotive place, they're also going to require a phase two environmental study. Don't let these things scare you. It just costs some money to do that. The phase two is so phase one is more understanding the use, what was done. Do they think there's any possible contaminants? Phase two is, yep, it was an automotive shop. I saw some oil drippings and things like that onto the concrete surface. So we are going to pull phase two environmental study. We're going to do some borings both in the concrete slab as well as everything outside. Um, I've had two projects already this year that have gone both phase one and phase two study. On the one, they required an extra $3,000 or $4,000 into phase two environmental study to pull out this area that they saw was contaminated. The other one passed through with flying colors, no concerns. But it is something to think about if you are looking to purchase this property from somebody else. A lot of times we try to push these phase one and phase two environmental studies off to the seller. And if something comes back, have them be responsible for any kind of environmental cleanup. So when it comes to renovation expansion, typically we see that timeline could be as little as 8 months. I have one right now down in Kentucky that's moving through really, really, really quick. She had a lot of reduction in alignment before she got together with us. She should be closing on her loan next month, and we're going to start construction. I believe the following. We might delay it a little bit because just because of timing of getting some of the equipment with longer lead times, but they can move fast. Any questions on any of this? Nope. All right. Last I'm going to talk about is what we call leasehold space, lease space build out. really is probably one of the fastest ways to get into to get your boarding and daycare facility open. Your biggest hiccup again is going to be zoning. Everybody loves to have dogs, but sometimes they don't like having a boarding and daycare facility next door to where they're working or next door to where they live. So again, zoning's first thing that we're going to check. Second thing is as you're going into this lease space, it might have a very, very great per square foot price on there, but make sure you understand all the other costs that come into that. So including the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, or what we call the CAM, your common area maintenance. So if it's a leasehold space, there's going to be X dollars per square foot that you're going to have to pay for the common area maintenance, which is cutting the grass and snow plowing and dumpster use and all those types of things. So understanding what all those things, what that looks like, helps you build out whether this is a fiscally responsible plan or not. We talk about study your client route into your space. So if you're moving into a strip mall, what's it take to get the clients and their dogs from the parking lot to your space? Is that a concern safety wise? Can you move to the end of the leasehold space to allow less traffic going through? Things to think about. Um, Other challenge with leasehold spaces is going to be outdoor space. A lot of times it's very difficult to get that unless you have a standalone building that you're renting, similar to what I'm showing here. This is actually Kennelwood Pet Resorts down in this one, I believe, is Marysville, Illinois. So they purchased the entire 9 or 10,000 square feet. They've got all the front parking for themselves, and then they developed the back parking area where they've got their outdoor play yards. But many times in leasehold spaces, it's hard to find that piece of grass that for the outdoor play. Next, look for and ask for build out credits if possible. Negotiate early. Ask for as much as possible. Sometimes it might require you to have a longer lease. So instead of 5 years, it might be 10 years. Working with a client right now down in Atlanta, and she was able to get about $35 to $40 a square foot for leasehold build out. Makes your project that much easier for it to come into budget. So basically, what that means is if we come in at, we'll call just raw numbers, $150 a square foot to build out for what she needs, the landlord's going to pay 40 of that. That's great. I think in order to do that, she had to go up to like a 10-year plus a 5-year extension after that. Sure, a full understanding of who is responsible for what. This comes up often when it comes to construction, like, okay, who's responsible for replacing the HVAC unit, the air conditioning unit? And replacing the air conditioning unit, does that mean it's just the landlord's responsible for putting a new one in place, and then the tenant is responsible for doing all the additional ductwork, wiring, everything like that? So just that's where having that realtor that really understands the pet care space can help negotiate on your behalf and hits a lot of these bullet points. Um, Next bullet point, likely plans for sound attenuation. What we're talking about here is, hey, if you've got a leasehold space and you've got tenants to the right of you and tenants to the left of you, they're going to ask you to add some sound walls in there. Not the end of the world, not crazy expensive, but it is an additional cost that you need to think about. We're seeing more and more leases come through that says the area must be soundproof. When you ask for clarifying what soundproof means, you get a whole array of different things along those lines. One was just like, we just don't want to have a bar with loud noises late at night. Okay, cross that off. We're just going to be a veterinary hospital. We're working between the hours of 7 and 5. Um, Timeline, about 9 to 18 months is typically what we see here. Got one right now we're working with in New Jersey. He signed a lease January, just signed it a little prematurely. That's okay. It happens. I think there was concern that it might go elsewhere. He's got 6 months of free rent. We are doing everything in our power to get all the construction documents ready, submit for permit so we can start construction here beginning of May and potentially hit his timeline of free rent. Worst case is he has to pay a month of rent without being able to bring in revenue.
You have time for a question, Jeff?
Yep, please.
Okay. We have a question that says, we own a 15,000 square foot bardo that was our horse training and breeding facility. Our home is attached to the front with 24 stalls and an indoor sand riding arena. Two questions. The setbacks for horse farms are closer than dog kennels. What steps should I take with township first? Second, what material suggestions over existing wood walls, and is it possible to put turf over sand in the arena? So I guess first question is, what steps should she take with the township?
Yeah, so I think a my take is always a frank conversation with somebody at the county or the township, saying, "Hey, here's what I am seeing. I have this existing, horse barn. Here's your requirements for the horse barn. Here's what I'm seeing for boarding and daycare. Is there a way that we, instead of having to move this building, is there a way that we can, and here's where you're going to ask for that variance a little bit. Depending on where you're at, the likelihood is they're going to say, yeah, let's figure out what we're trying to do, or there might be something to do with, all right, let's add in um, uh, some additional landscaping or something like that, something to please them. Not knowing exactly where you're at, whether it's city or rural, I'm guessing it's rural if it's a horse barn. I have a feeling they're going to be a little more flexible with you, especially that it's existing. So you can email, you can stop in, or you can pick up the phone. I really like stopping in myself if it's not too far. And just having that frank conversation. I seem to, when we do that, we get passed around to the right people a lot quicker than just typically picking up a phone and making a call.
Okay.
When it comes to the turf, I believe, Beth, you have Canine Grass coming in, doing one of these webinars in a month or two.
Mhm.
I, uh, Long way to say yes. I'm pretty sure you can put the artificial turf over the sand, but I do believe they're going to want to bring in a series of pea gravel and things like that to help filtrate, from larger stones to the top to the smaller at the bottom, and then having the sand base is great. But again, I'm going to defer to Ken Carmi at Canine Grass on that. He's done a lot more of that than I have.
He'll be our next webinar in April. So,
Oh, perfect.
and if you want to email me with your question, I can facilitate an introduction to him as well. I can just send you his contact info if you don't want to wait for that webinar. She also asked what material suggestions over existing wood walls.
Yeah, so I will get a little bit into finishes down the slide here. Beth, you told me I had 5 hours on this webinar, right?
Yeah, no problem.
I'm kidding. So typically what we recommend, a couple different things. Usually it's going to be FRP is going to be our final finish. So fiberglass reinforced panels, probably one of the least expensive and very durable product out there, but it's what's underneath there. So if dogs are going to have hard access to it, so if it's a daycare yard, I'm going to recommend like the backer behind the FRP be like cement board or impact resistant drywall at the bare minimum. If it's kennels, we can probably get away with moisture and impact resistant drywall and FRP. That's one avenue. We also do a lot of epoxy coatings up walls, very durable. Again, we're probably going to want to finish those walls out depending on how the space is going to be used. So whether it's going to be plywood we put on there, coat that, or if we're just going to go right over top moisture and impact resistant drywall. But um, glad to see you're thinking like what is going to be the least destructive for these dogs. And FRP is pretty cost effective. There's another term that you're going to hear. It's called Acrovin. It is same concept as FRP, just a lot more decorative and hundreds of thousands of color options. But comes at, of course, a higher price tag. So architecture and engineering. Do you need an architect? Do I need engineering? It really depends. Really depends what you're looking for. Some municipalities are going to require engineered documents. So what's that mean? So you've bought let's call it a blank shell of a building. and you're building it out for boarding and daycare, and you need to put in HVAC. So you need to put in your air conditioning and your heating. For dog daycare spaces, dog boarding and dog daycare facilities, there is a lot more stringent guidelines than actually for humans, and there has to be a certain amount of air exchanges that occur every hour. They change state by state, county by county. And most of them are going to require some sort of engineered documents for that. So what that means is TWC, we're not engineers, but we would handle all the engineered documents. So we have national parties that we would reach out to. We'd finish our floor plan, and then we'd say, all right, help design the engineering, the HVAC with the ductwork and the fresh air and all those types of things. And that's what we would provide at permitting process. The same thing is going to happen with your electrical as well as your plumbing. Most counties are going to require some sort of engineered drawings. There are times when they can say you can be design build on it, which means the subcontractor would actually submit his own plans of, okay, I'm just cutting in a trench drain, I'm tying into this drain here. Here's what that scope looks like, and they can push that through. So that's why I say sometimes the municipality may require that. Same thing with the architect. They may say, hey, this is just a small renovation. I'm comfortable with what your contractor has put together as far as the construction documents. You really don't need any architecture. I would say that happens less likely than more likely, but it does happen. So it's really having a conversation again with the county, understanding what they are going to require from you, and a lot of it has to do with the scope of it. Um, I talk about programming. That is probably one of the biggest things that I think us at TWC do, and I think a lot of people don't spend enough time, and that really should be your first step. So, as TWC, and all I can do is speak about how we do it, and a lot of other firms do it very similar, just have different terminology for it. But way we go to town is we'll send you a questionnaire, and we're going to ask you a whole slew of questions, and we're trying to get inside your head of what you're looking for, the number of dogs you want to house, how your operations are. Are you going to be doing grooming? Are you going to be doing daycare? Are you rotational play? Is this enrichment based? All those types of things. So we can start understanding the size and the space of what you need. So we're going to go through this. Let's say you come back and it's determined we're looking to house 60 days combined between boarding and daycare. We've run it through our matrix, and it's going to spit out more or less what the square footage of that building is going to be. I'm going to then come back to you and say, hey, based upon what we are seeing on national averages, if you're looking to build out leasehold build out at 6,000 square feet, here's the size building you're looking for. Here's what you should budget for the construction costs. So we want to get through that money side as quickly as possible, just so you understand kind of what that's looking for. But you also have this number that you can kind of come back to the bank and say, here's where we're thinking. This is not set. Can I get pre-approved for this? And what's that look like? If they say yes, great. If they say no, I can only approve you for X, then maybe we backwards engineer and go backwards a little bit and say, okay, based upon what we're being told, we need to look for a 4,000 square foot building. Are you okay with that? Right. And then maybe this is a startup. Maybe we don't put as much money in it up front. And then when we get to the second or third facility that you're looking to do, now you've got you're no longer a projection-based finance or loan. You are more they understand that, hey, you know how to operate this business. We're more comfortable lending you a little bit more money. So programming is key, and stay in that for a while. Too many times we see projects go to an architectural department that's strictly architectural. They tell them all their wants and needs, and they don't get into the cost side. And now you've presented this $100,000 architectural fee for all the plans and permits, and you can't get the funding, or it's way over budget. And now you have to try to chip away at what you don't have to do with. So the more you can stay in here and make this all work, the better. And that's what we like to do. Size does matter. I say that of course, the bigger the construction project, the more it's going to cost. But also, the smaller they are, the more per square foot it becomes. So there's a lot of economies of scale. So looking at those different things when we say 4,000 square feet and we don't have that budget, well, maybe 3,000 square feet really doesn't buy you that much more because of the economies of scale. So there's a lot of back and forth that we play in this. Um, Estimate costs. So our process is we'll go through this matrix with you. We're going to build out the floor plan, and then we're going to send it to our estimating department, and they're going to put a pretty good number on it. Now, he's going to make a ton of assumptions. We've not gone through finishes and all these other things with you, but he's going to put a pretty good number on it. And now we've got a starting point. And as long as you know where that starting point is, maybe we bump up that number 15, 20%, just to have sluff. Now you've got even more things that you can bring to the bank to try to get this project off the ground. Site work. I can't say enough about site work on new construction. It is going to be your biggest variable. We just don't know what it's going to cost to develop that land. We don't know what the town is going to require for parking spaces. We don't know what it's going to cost to dig out and bring in fresh dirt, what that soil looks like. There's so many factors in that. So when looking at new construction, well, the way we do it is we just kind of put an allowance in there, very budgetary, saying we think it's going to be this. We hope it's less. It could be more, but that's something definitely to be cognizant of is site work costs can get pretty high. And when I say site work, it's everything. It's bringing in your utilities. It's bringing in your parking lot. It's doing all the grading and the leveling and retaining walls and those types of things. Um, and then lastly, spend the money on existing conditions investigation. So the biggest things I tell you is, again, spend the money on the plumbing and structural and do the soil borings. Questions? Nope, still good. Awesome. Construction budgeting. So I like this slide just so you kind of understand the various buckets that are out there. So many times, I'm at a show and somebody says, "How much to build 6,000 square feet?" And I say, "Well, what do you want me to include?" They're like, "Well, all in." And I give them a number and they go, "Well, you're outrageous." And then they say, "My general contractor said they could build it for this, and you said it was this. Why are you double?" And I said, "Well, what are they including? You told me all in." And he says, "Well, let me find out." And they find out, well, the contractor said it's just building only construction costs. So looking at this, there are these are kind of the categories that we put it in. So you're going to have your site purchase, whether that's the building itself or whether it's the land you're going to purchase. In leasehold, you don't necessarily have that bucket. You're going to have your site development, so the infrastructure, again, the biggest unknown. Now you're going to have your building only. So that's putting up the shell of the building, putting the roof on it, running all your mechanical, electrical units, finishing out the walls, all those types of things that go into the inside of the building. So that's your building only cost. Now you're also going to have that design and engineering cost. So that's the architects and the engineer costs. They're going to have their fees. You're going to have your equipment costs, right? So you're going to have a lot of whether it's bathing tubs or pre-manufactured kennels or cleaning equipment is another big one that we see in there. That's going to be a separate bucket. And a lot of the lenders are going to separate these buckets as well. Last is soft costs. So I was just working through a project today. They're looking for quite a bit of money from the bank. And I would say of that, I'm just going to throw a number of 5 million that they were looking for the bank. Almost $800,000 of that goes to soft costs. So what does that soft cost mean? That's construction contingency. That's working capital. That is going to be SBA fees, guarantee fees, interest reserves, permits, on and on and on. So real quickly, that 500,000 gets down to 300 or 4.2 million. You take out the purchase price of the land of roughly 900,000. Now you're down to 3 million. You subtract out equipment. Now you're down to about 2.5 to 2.8. Now we're looking at, okay, how can we ground up construction make this project happen, building only and site development for 2.5. So there's a lot of buckets to consider. Having a consultant, having somebody on your side is definitely going to help with that piece of it. Questions?
Yes. Buckeye Kennels would like to know if TWC does work with renovations.
Absolutely. Would more than love to talk with you more about your project. Thank
And
you.
Jeff's contact info will be at the end and also shared with the recording of this, so you'll be able to email him directly.
So couple more slides. Thanks for hanging with me. Here, I'm just going to talk about things to think about when designing. Minimize edges everywhere where you can. So outside corners of the interior build out is probably one of the places that gets the most destruction with dogs running and leashes grabbing around that corner. We can protect that, but you've got that side of it. Minimize edges, less places for dirt, grime, things like that to build up. And the same thing on the exterior of the building. And I know our architectural team was going to yell at me, but the more square or rectangle you can make that building if you're going ground up, the more cost effective it's going to be. The more outside corners you put on the exterior of the building, the more money it's going to cost to build that. So there's that fine line, and there's certain things that the county or the municipality is going to make you do to dress up the front of that. Use as durable products as you can find. I am more than happy to run through any products that you're looking at and let you know my experience with them. I'm a big fan, of course, of epoxy-based products for flooring. Wall protection can be epoxy, can be FRP, can be Acroven. The pre-manufactured kennels, there's a lot of good ones out there, and I'm sure at some point Beth's going to have one of the kennel manufacturers on here. There are some great ones out there. All of them have their pros, all of them have their cons. You just have to pick your poison. But um, typically more cost effective than trying to stick build what we call luxury suites. Maximize airflow and dehumidify. So typically what we see when a non-animal care engineer designs a animal care space is they don't have enough dehumidification happening. So besides all the dogs running and sweating all day long, you've got grooming areas, you've got all this moisture coming in here. Many times I walk into these facilities and they're running 70, 80% relative humidity inside the building. Any of those that live in the Midwest knows what 70 and 80% relative humidity is. It's not comfortable. Flooring, I can't say enough about flooring and making sure you get it done the right way the first time. Trying to replace flooring in the future is a huge burden on your facility and your staff. They hate it. The vibration and the noise of doing the new floor is discomfort to the dogs, and then they get diarrhea, things like that. So get the flooring done properly. Places that I always say to spend more money is going to be your flooring, your HVAC is going to be one of the top two items to really focus on, and then wall protection. Sound control is huge. How do you separate out kennels versus or versus daycare facilities? So staggered stud walls, all those types of things to help the noise level down so that the office staff aren't hearing the dogs barking all day long. How are you going to clean the place? If it's an existing facility, are you going to just run with a wet dry fact system? And there's some great ones out there. Or are you just going to pick up the solids, clean up the liquids, and then mop and go? Or if you've got trench drains, are you going to go with a just hose and squeegee, or you're going to look at some scrubbing units? So there's those things to consider. Time is to consider it early on in the design process. And then lastly, wall protection. And, we've brought that up already. Planning for being operational, just a couple bullet points. Make sure you have your pricing established before you open the doors. It's not always just what my competition is charging. You've got to make sure that the budget works for what you've either borrowed or what you've put in yourself. And at the end of the day, you're in a business to make money. So have your pricing established based upon what it's going to cost and what you need to pay your staff. Look for ways to make your staff as efficient as possible. This is going to be back and forth. So for those that have experience in the industry, you're going to give us, hey, this is what's working at our facility now. Here's what I want to change. And then moving forward, our architects are always looking at the most efficient flow of bringing dogs from their kennels outside first thing in the morning for their early breaks, and then bringing them possibly if it's winter months in the Northwest, bringing them inside for inside play, and then bringing all those dogs into that daycare space so that now they can clean out all those kennels all at once versus trying to do it all at once. So Labor is one of your biggest costs for those in the industry. Labor is the biggest cost that you typically see. So trying to make things as efficient as possible is going to help. We like to see 40% labor. 50% is a little bit high, but that's where the industry is right now, unfortunately. 40% is where you're really, really efficient. Going to need that fecal management plan. If you're starting up, definitely go see other places in operation. This is such a wonderful group that we work with in the boarding and daycare world. Most of them will open their doors for you, and if you need some help there, certainly reach out, and I can point you in the directions. Engage consultants. Engage them very early on. You're going to need somebody to help you with the business side, operational marketing, social media, all those types of things. Oh, um, so definitely look for that. There are some great groups out there. I think you've got one coming up, Beth, with Dog Gurus here in the near future that has some great launch formulas and other programs out there to help you get started. And most importantly, keep the animals safe and enriched. So the trend has been for some time, and more of the older kennels are catching on. But the enrichment side is really where we are focusing, especially at TWC. You'll see some of our designs now have scent rooms, and are designed. The daycare yards are designed for rotational play. So we're always thinking about keeping the animals enriched. Recap. Real quick, figure out what you want and need in your building. Add team members as they arise. As Beth mentioned, we both have tons of contacts in the industry. If we don't know the answers, somebody we know does, and we are more than happy to put you in touch with them. Zoning plays a big part. I've seen too many projects. They get very excited about the building, and we just can't make the zoning work. So dig into that first. I am happy to work with you guys looking at any properties you're looking at to understand the zoning. You can reach out to me. Verify the utilities. Plan appropriately for the timelines. When it comes to signing leases or doing due diligence, if you're engaged with me, I ask you to include me in any of that early on, just so I can understand your timelines, and make sure we're pushing forward to help you meet those. Banks take a while to get through the loan process. There's these environmental studies that need to occur, so nothing moves nearly as quickly as we want. Um, Most likely, you're going to need some architectural and engineering, whether that's full on or partial. I mean, we have some projects where we have a limited set of productions because that's all they need. So we're not out here to get as much architectural as necessary. It's really what the project needs are. You're going to have to spend some money on site investigation, and unfortunately, that's going to be upfront and out of pocket on your end. That's where we want to be included, or whatever consultant it is, to help go through a lot of these things so you're not spending money that you're not going to be able to recoup. Build an accurate budget. We can certainly help with that. There's some other programs out there, and I know, as I mentioned, Dog Gurus have some stuff that they can look at. But part of our process is running through what we call a project cost study, where we go through all the construction costs. We go through what we figure your occupancy rates are going to be, and we want to see where this thing cash flows at the end of year one. And if it's over 1.1 cash debt to cash revenue, then most banks are going to be on board, especially if they see year two and year three starting to increase. So that's part of our process is making sure that it cash flows. Maximize airflow, dehumidify, operational plan. Definitely go visit another facility. I don't know how many times I've toured with clients of some of the facilities we've either partnered with other people that have built, or we have built, and we tell everybody, tell us what you like, what you don't like, and then hire consultants as needed. That's it.
Thank you so much, Jeff. That was really helpful.
Oh, good. Good. A little bit longer than I thought, Beth. So
No, we
good.
had some great questions too.
Good.
So if anybody is watching this and they have questions and they're just starting out, even if you don't think it's specifically related to construction, Jeff is a wonderful resource. So, and generally a pretty friendly guy. So you can reach out to him and either he or I can point you in the right direction. We can connect you with some good people in the industry. And there's a lot of really good people in the industry. So hopefully that answered a lot of questions. All right. Do we have any other questions before we say goodbye? I don't think we do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Thanks.